Hi.
All right, well, good morning, you guys, and welcome to this morning's Wuxing, Pai, Tai Chi, Qigong, Daoyin, and Baguazhang. We're going to do, today we're going to do some various different practices. We're going to do our usual warm-up, but I also want to do a little bit of the walking Qigong that I do, that I find to be really valuable, in addition to the form work that we do. All right, so let's start feet roughly shoulder width and parallel. We want to get a good basic Chanchuang stance or post-standing stance. So get your feet roughly parallel and shoulder width, and you want to find where the center of the triangle of the foot is. All right, so we're going to shift forward and feel our weight move into the ball of the foot, and then shift back and feel it move into the heel, and find that sweet spot that's just a little bit forward of the center point. And then we're going to shift into one leg and roll to the outside of the foot so we can find the outer margin, and roll the foot in, find the inner margin, and find that sweet spot. That's that longitudinal center line. And we do the same thing on the other side. Shift over, roll the foot out a little bit, roll it in a little bit, find that longitudinal center line, and then balance them out between each other. One of the keys we're always looking for is this fold here. A lot of times people don't fold enough in the quad. They're not allowing themselves to sit down. Right? You get this feeling like you're about to sit, and then we're still in that triangle of the foot. So this nice, upright, centralized energy. And we're sunken into the legs just a little bit. We're going to also drop the tailbone. Just imagine that there's like just a light weight, a couple of ounce weight on the tailbone, and it's pulling downward, and you're just going to relax your low back and let that lordosis decrease and open up the low back. Meanwhile, the chin is going to ever so slightly tuck down and open up the back of the neck, as if you're being suspended from above to open the back of the neck, and the whole spine starts to just feel like it's being elongated. We get that buoyancy in the legs, and then we also pay attention to the right and left channels from the ball and socket joints of the hips up through the center of each side. So if we've got this side of the body from the ball and socket joint up to the Baguazhang point here, same thing here, in the center of each half of the body. We want a nice straight line so the weight descends straight down into the ball and socket joints and is supported by the legs. Okay. Pay attention to the hips and the muscles of the glutes, and are you rotating out or rotating in? Can you feel tension here? Can it adjust? Can you fold inward and outward? And when you do sink, there's a slight rolling in and rolling out in these muscles. And we want to play with that and learn to adjust and let that happen naturally and relaxedly. So it's always working with the natural body, the natural position of rising and falling. Next thing I like to do is pay attention to the collarbone and the scapula. And the collarbone comes from here and sits on the coracoid process on the scapula, which just sits right on the top of it. The acromion, where the coracoid process is just beneath that. And the muscles from the chest connect to that, and they control this movement of the shoulders moving in and out. So the muscles of the chest pull it in, the muscles of the back pull it out. And we want to play around with that and make sure that our shoulders are in the sort of midpoint, not collapsed forward and not pulled back, right in the midpoint, and we relax the arms down. This is a good, natural, relaxed, neutral position. From this position, when we do things like Wu Ji, we're going to then empty the chest, and like we're making the body hollow, so that you'll see it like the back expands out slightly, the chest empties downward when you're in Wu Ji, right? Just so that their shoulders aren't like here and pulled backward. We don't want this position. As you can see, there's tension there. If I relax that down and let it naturally fold, it comes inward. I gotta let somebody in. Okay, so we're going to be doing some Wu Ji a little bit later, so that's why I wanted to mention that. So let's get our basic Chanchuang Stance. And we're going to do a quick mental review of the meridian flow. So we've got 3 meridians that go from the big toe and the sole of the foot, and flow up the instep and up the insides of the legs to the pelvic floor and up the front of the body onto the rib cage and chest. Okay? But they also flow up into the dantian and up the center line all the way to the Baihui point. These are the yin channels of the legs, and they come up. Then the yin channels transform and move internally into the torso and return to the surface at the chest. One here, and one under the axillary. And they flow down the insides of the arms to the palms. And those are the yin channels of the arms. They are connected. Like there's a channel, like since there's 3 channels here, there's 3 channels here. One of the channels here transforms and becomes one of the channels of the arms. And then so on and so forth. They just work in that sort of pairing from leg to arm. There's another pairing of yin to yang. So there are yin channels of the arms that become yang channels of the arms. Okay? They are paired also there. And the 3 yang channels of the arms flow this way, up the side of the head, or up the side of the shoulder, over the tops, and onto the side of the head, where they again move inward through the orifices, interface with the nervous system, and re-emerge around the eyes. They emerge and flow over the top of the head, over the sides of the head, and down the front outside corner of the body. So they're moving, sort of enveloping the yin channels and moving back down. And they come down the legs. And these are known as the yang channels that go from the head down are known as the yang channels of the legs. And they go down the front outside, the outside, and the back of the legs, all the way down and over the tops of the feet, and then back under, and they become the yin channels again. So there's this cycling sequence. I'm mentioning that because we're going to do meridian flow. Even when we're being still, you can learn to train the movement of the qi with breath, coordinated with the breath. So one of the things I like to do in my basic standing at the beginning, eventually I stop working with it, I just observe it. But at the very beginning when I practice, I'll often cycle through that with my intention because I want to clear the channels. Okay? So I'm going to place the tongue lightly on the roof of the mouth, keep the hands on the lower dantian, and I'm going to do that teasing gong. I'm going to do that gentle gathering from the pelvic floor and drawing inward and kind of condensing into the dantian like everything is moving up and in through those yin channels. So I pay attention to the yin channels of the legs. And as they move into the dantian, and as I exhale, I release through the yin channels of the arms. Then on my next inhale, I'll let my awareness move through the yang channels of the arms, all the way up and envelop the upper dantian. And then on the exhale, back down the yang channels of the legs. Now, one of the things I like to do in this practice is I will cycle not just them as a group, but I'll actually start to pick the individual channels. So this way I have a number of breaths that I'll go through. The first breath, for example, I'll take and I'll work on the spleen channel of the leg. And that starts on the inside of the big toe, and it comes up across the inside of the tendon and just behind the bone of the lower leg. Then it crosses over the front part of the quadricep, comes up here to the rib cage here and enters into the body. Okay? So on my inhale, I'll trace that with my mind. And you may find it helpful to trace it with your fingers one time. So let's do that one time and then we'll do it again with the mind. So inhale, just behind the bone, over the inside of the quadricep, inside front of the quadricep, right to the side of the rib cage. That meridian then moves internal, transforms, and becomes the lung meridian as it emerges from the chest here, flows up, the chest to the shoulder, and down the bicep, right to the thumb, right, on both sides. So now we're going to do that tracing. We're going to inhale and exhale, do the whole tracing on the inhale and exhale. So on the inhale, come up, just behind the bone of the lower leg, over the inner head of the quadricep, the rib cage, and then exhale down the arm to the thumb. Just so we've got a good mental picture. So now we're going to do it with our mind. On the inhale, we draw up. On the exhale, we come down the arm to the thumb. Now from there, that one connects with the yang channel that flows up the index finger, over the outside of the forearm, over the front of the shoulder, just on top of the collarbone into the little hollow in here, up the neck, and across to the opposite side of the corner of the nose. So index finger up, to the outside of the elbow, up the front of the shoulder, just above the collarbone, front of the trapezius or the sternocleidomastoid, and right across to the opposite side. Okay. So now I'll inhale and flow up that side. Just now that channel, when it emerges, becomes the yang channel of the leg, emerges underneath the center of the eye, comes down the face. Once it gets here, it's got two branches. One little branch wraps around, comes up the jawline and over to the top of the corner of the sort of widow's peak of my hair here. But the other branch comes down the outside of the sort of the pectoral muscles that across the outside of the nipple, and then, more importantly, outside of the abdominal wall. And then down the outside of the quadricep, the front of the shin, and right to the outside of the second toe. And that's the stomach channel. So this whole yang meridian of the arm and leg goes up this way. One more time, inhale up. Do both sides. And then exhale. So now you've got sort of a visceral memory of the flow of that. So now we're going to do that with just our mind. Again, coming up the index finger, up onto the nose. And on the exhale, down and around the face and down the body. Now what I want to do is I want to cycle those four meridians, the spleen coming up, the lung coming out to the hand, the large intestine coming up the index finger to the nose, and then the stomach that goes down. Yeah, and that's one full cycle of 1/3 of the whole system. Those are the first four meridians we're going to work with. And we're probably not going to do them all day. We're just going to do these four for today and then return to the whole. And then next week, we'll do the next four. And we'll do that over the next few weeks until we learn it a little better. Okay? So we start big toe, inhaling up. From the chest down to the thumb. From the index finger up to the nose. And from the eye down and around the face and down the outside front corner of the body. And relax. Now, notice how that feels. Notice even just brushing all of that. Notice how your body changed. Those 4 meridians are sort of like a good instigating point, a good starting point for creating movement and change. The spleen is responsible for gathering qi from the food and digestate. The lung is responsible for gathering qi from the air. And the two come together to create true qi in the body. Now, the stomach and the large intestine are involved in the processing of energy and food and transforming it. It's transformative actions. They're the workhorses, while the lung and the spleen govern the whole process. Okay? That's why it's so valuable, those 4 first, and that's why we start with those 4. All right, let's return to this basic position. And now I want you to try to keep those 4 meridians in mind as we go through this entire warm-up process. Try to feel all 4 of them as we go through with the bouncing expansions. Now we go out and breathe through those 4 meridians. Not like they're cycling, but now like they can breathe in and out, because they can. And bounce. Keep those meridians in mind as you bounce. Notice how they're feeling in relationship to the rest of the body, what amounts to the other meridians. You may not know them yet, but you've got a sense of where they are. There's one located along the sides, right? On the outside middle, one located in the back, and along the outside back for the yang, and then inside back and inside middle are also part of it. And then counter swing. And then column swing. And counter column swing. And close. Hands, wrists, and fingers. The other way. Add in the elbows. The other way. And shoulders. Fingertips lightly touching. Shoulder blades down as the hands go up. Now here, before we reverse, we're going to do a meridian breathing practice in the same vein. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine drawing in through the meridian that flows from the thumb, or from the chest to the thumb, and from the index finger to the nose, as well as the big toe up to the rib cage and the eye down to the big toe. So we're breathing, like when we move in, all four meridians are breathing in towards the center. When we're exhaling out, all four meridians are breathing out. Gently extend that thumb and index finger, and then inhale. Whole body is breathing. Not only the meridian like breathing from the end, but it's almost like the whole thing is absorbing inward. Even this part of it is absorbing in and moving inward. So the whole body is breathing inward, but it's moving along the lines of those meridians. Relax down, relax the arms, and then reverse. Up, palms out. Shoulder blades down, fingertips together, elbows towards each other. Trying to bring the elbows close. And the palms. And opening and closing the chest. And drop it down. Trunk twist from the center. Now, you'll notice here, I'm going to pat along these right and left channels as I come up. I start here at the ball and socket joint of the hip, allowing the hand to hit in the sacrum or just outside the sacrum. Here, I'm trying to create a vibration that penetrates down and in and breaks up stasis inside. The whole thing, though, is predicated upon the idea that I'm turning from here, that this waist is what drives it. My arms just kind of fling around, and right at the end, I just pull them towards the target, but I want to try to release them. That teaches you how to do and not do at the same time, how and when to apply energy for the maximum relaxation and borrowing the power of momentum. Then we start to work our way up, going first to the waist on either side, waist and low back, trying to get that vibration to come through here. And as I move up, I'm just trying to get that vibration to come through until I get here, in which case then I'm going to probably just the lower hand or the back hand will always just kind of pat the low back. Okay, once it gets too high up and I don't want to create tension in the shoulder. So I just slowly work my way up, trying to create a vibration on each side. Sense of feeling that pat penetrate into the body and into the shoulder. And then I'm going to come up right under this Jiajang point that has that right and left channel. That's the top of the right and left channel through the torso. I'm still using the torso and then just letting it, targeting, lifting it up, and then letting it drop, trying to let gravity do more of the work of the padding. So I'm not tightening up my body. And then come right below the collarbone here, getting the upper chest to get a vibration into the thymus and into the thyroid. And I lightly tap the center of the chest with the fingertips. And then the solar plexus and mid-back. And then lower dantian. And I'm going to pat the daimai. And the hips. Now here you're going to see we're going to work with all three of each of the lower body channels. So when we go patting down the side, when we come down the outside edge here, we pat down the outside of the legs, we're patting down the gallbladder channels. When we come to the inside, we're going to come up the middle, inside middle, and that's the liver channel. And we come out to the front. Now we're going to come down to front outside. That's the stomach channel we already learned. Inside front, right to the bone, on the front inside. We're getting that spleen channel. And we're going to come to the low back and down the back of the legs. That's the bladder channel. And then on the inside, we're going to get this inside back corner right in here. And that's the kidney channel. And now we've just stimulated all of the channels of the lower legs, or of the legs. Yin and yang. And I usually will do this a little bit just to shake them out. And I'm always thinking in terms of these channels, and like all my movements, I've got this sort of like, I'm trying to just flush it. I'm just clear it. It's like I'm trying to send energy through movement and vibration, like shaking it to clear the chi from the lower leg. And then shake it out. And I'm going to circle the daimai. This is getting the chi to circle around the waist, right? So. Then the other way. And I bring my awareness down to the ball and socket joints, and I'm going to move those. I might widen my feet a little bit. And the other way. Turn one foot out, gently press down and pull the ball and socket joint open. And circulate that hip. So I'm moving around the axis of the joint itself. And the other way. The other side, turn that one out. Gently press and pull that ball and socket joint open. And circle it. And the other way. And then I'm going to back and forth. It's like I'm turning them in relationship to each other. Two ball and socket joints while my tailbone stays down. Knees open, always paying attention to the spiral power from my waist through my legs to the ground and how I'm relating to the ground through the triangles of the foot. One leg becoming receptive and spiraling in, while the other leg becomes expansive, spiraling out. If you do this with your hands, you get a sense of what's happening. It helps you to think in terms of this one's spiraling in. As I receive weight into this leg, this one's spiraling out as I push. Spiraling in. And you'll find this movement is the same movement you have in Dragon Rolling Pearl. It's just down instead of out here. Because it's like when I rotate open, right? Rotating open, rotating closed. It's the same action as Dragon Rolling Pearl. So that's why, one of the reasons why I do this is it lets me emphasize the legs and how that creates the action that then comes up. If you watch the spiral, comes up through the torso, and right into the arm and shoulder. And same thing, it comes in and pulls the arm and shoulder in and out and in. And out and in. Play around with each side a little bit till you get the feel of it, because we want that coiling action here on this right and left side. Be careful of this. This tends to happen a lot. I notice women tend to do this a lot, and I think it comes from, one, the fact that your hips are wider than ours. And so your weight will tend to want to move out, and you tend to use your hips more when you like dance and move. But Tai Chi isn't like dancing. We don't want our weight to go like this, out. We don't want our hips making that motion. We literally want weight to always go down. So there's this sense of this jiajang down to the ball and socket joint is always vertical in relationship. So even when I'm doing this, it's not like my hips are kicking out and I'm doing this. I don't want that. I want the hips to stay perpendicular or parallel to the ground so that they don't tilt, right? The bowl of the pelvis needs to stay upright so that it's all, and it just turns back and forth. What happens though is that forces a spiraling stretch into the ball and socket joint of the leg you're leaving, which is the point. If I go like this here, I don't get the same spiral stretch here as if I keep this tailbone down and twist. You'll really feel the ligaments, particularly in the ball and socket joints of the hips, really get a nice little gentle strengthening twist. And then what happens is this provides a nice stable base that this turns off of. So the movement is more from here up in terms of the twist in the torso, not down here. See, I've got that straight plumb line from the jiajang point right down to the ball and socket joint. Same thing here. There's not any tilt. If there's a tilt, you're creating tension, right? Try that. I mean, even just tilt and notice how much it puts tension on the outside of the leg, right? Or on the back of the hip. Whereas if I keep it nice and upright, the only thing that loads is the powerful muscles of the quadriceps, which are designed to gather energy and release it. Gather energy and release. Not that there's no place for those hip movements, they're just not in Tai Chi. And then if I just go from this small circle in the hands and I just open it up as though the sphere is getting bigger, it starts to look like this. This is Dragon Plays in Clouds. And the coil is still uncoiling and uncoiling. And relax. Those are all great practices for loosening the body and strengthening the legs. All right, I want to just do a couple more warm-up pieces before we move on to some Tai Chi and the circle walking. And I want to do the circle walking a little bit to give you a concept of stepping methods and my favorite stepping method and why it is that way. And eventually you can learn to use that as a walking technique. But for now, what I want you to do is just, we're going to stretch the hamstrings. So bring the knees back, lift the sacrum, fold at the waist, elongate the spine, and just fold down. Then we're going to turn to one side. And then the other side. Then two dragons circle the pond. Back to the center. Good squat stance. And then an inguinal stretch. Place the hands down. Stretch the inguinal muscles by leaning the weight a little bit on the elbows with the legs on them. Just opening up these muscles on the insides of the thigh. Bring the heels back, press up the leg to the low back, roll the spine up onto the top. Little dragon spine. And shake it out. All right, circle walking. When most people walk, one of the challenges they have is that they fall into their feet. They kind of lean forward and then they catch themselves as they walk. We don't want to have that experience. We actually want to have a sense of the center line. Hang on, somebody's trying to admit in here. The center line is staying upright and relaxed and never having the weight falling forward, right? Always having the center line aligned and the center of the chest directly over the center of the lower dantian. Now, there's two ways we can walk in that, keeping that in mind. One is the heel-toe method, which is how most people would tend to do that, which is to put the heel down and the toe down, right? This tends to lend itself to a kind of stiffening of the body where you impact with the heel. And that's not ideal for the body. As we know, like, particularly since most of us walk on sidewalks and concrete, having impact on hard surfaces isn't great for joints. And even if it doesn't seem like a lot, if you do it over and over and over again, it can be very, very uncomfortable. Okay, and it can eventually wear out the joints. So if you're going to do that, the key is to gently place the heel, then the foot, and roll. Have a sense of absorbing into the leg, like the foot comes down, lightly touches, and you're still catching the weight. I don't prefer that method. I prefer the other method, which is called dragon stepping, where the whole foot kind of picks up from the ground at the same time, all at once, like the whole thing, instead of picking up like heel first and then reaching out the heel. Like pick up the heel, toe comes up last, and then heel goes down first, toe comes down last. That's the other way. The way I like to do is the whole foot comes up, skims over the ground, stays parallel, and then I sink just a little bit and receive my weight. What this does is it teaches me to use the whole triangle of the foot to make contact, and it also teaches me to outreach and receive through that leg. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk straight across a couple of times. And if you have room to walk straight, that's fine. Go ahead and do straight. Once we've got started, we're going to do a circle. Circles are really powerful too because the turn has its own value. But first we want to get the stepping method down. So the key is, again, the plumb line. The Bai Hui point all the way through the Dantian should be upright. I should reach out naturally. Now I want you to sink down and just bring your foot out and put it down flat. And notice where that is, where you can keep everything upright and relaxed. You can have good stability here, right? And it may not be that far. It may only be here, depending upon the flexibility, strength, and pliability of all the tissues in the lower body. You may not be able to reach this far. That's fine. It doesn't matter how far you reach with your foot. What's key is to learn where that is, where the natural place is. If I sink, hold it out, and then place it down, where is that point? Then what I want to do is I want to pay attention to receiving weight. I'm not focusing on pushing off of the back leg. I'm focusing on receiving weight in my front leg. Then I can pick up the back leg. And again, I want to try to not pick it up like this, but pick it up like this, where the whole thing comes up. Skims out and receives. Sometimes it's called mud stepping too. Like imagine your foot stuck in mud. And going back down. Now you can emphasize that pull up to get that nice and level, the foot all coming up at once. That really does a good job of teaching you to do that. But it can be a bit much. Now, that's a good sort of remedial way of learning, that picking up and putting down. But eventually we want to make it natural enough that we could just walk without looking like we're doing weird things, like a chicken, because we don't need to, we want to be able to do it when we're doing anything, right? So if we get and make it subtle, notice how your body wants to move. Notice the momentums that happen. Like when I walk, there's this natural sort of like my body wants to shift and turn. The arms want to move a little bit for counterbalance. Let it. Always still focusing on the idea of the receiving leg and that triangle of the foot reaching out. Think of it as reaching out and receiving, reaching out and receiving, reaching out and receiving. This is another way I trained myself to do that, is I literally used my hands. And I went, reach out and receive, reach out and receive. So my legs would mirror that energy. My intention, as I reached out to receive, would get mirrored. And I could feel that. Okay? Now, ultimately, we eventually want to take this into a walking in a circle, because then we can take practices like the silk railing or the circling practice and do it while we're circle walking. Okay? But before we walk and Qigong at the same time, let's just walk. So place your hands on your Dantian. And what we're going to do to make this circle walk is we're going to shift into one leg, turn, and come out. Now, the leg that's on the inside, say I'm making a circle this way, the leg that's on the inside is always going to go straight. It's going to come straight through, right, brush past. The knees are going to nearly touch, and they're going to brush right past. Right? Then the outside leg, when it comes out, it's going to brush past. As soon as it brushes past, it's going to turn in slightly. See that turn in? Can you see that? Let me come back here. And turn in slightly. So when I finish, I'm here, and then I brush straight past again. And the outside foot turns in. Straight past, turn in. Straight past, turn in. Now I'm making very sharp turns to make it small because I'm on camera and I don't want to move off of camera. All right? Normally, you want to try to make it like, so you're taking about 8 to 10 steps to go around the circle. 8's perfect, but if you get 10, that's cool. What you'll find is like a 45-degree turn is perfect. If I'm here, I'm going this way. If I turn only 45 degrees, boom. The next 45 makes me straight this way. 45, I cut the angle. 45, I cut the other angle. And 8, and I'm back to the beginning of the circle. Okay? So, we move from our center, receptive, this is all I'm shooting for. Doesn't have to be big steps. They can be, but first we want to learn to get all the mechanics and the most important, that sense of outreach to receive with that front leg, that sense of being drawn into the front leg, like gravity is doing the work and you're surrendering and you're letting the energy move through you as you move. Good. Okay. Now, if we want to add another element in, so you want to add that circling, what we're going to do is we're going to have the hand comes up the center line, turns, and comes about 45 degrees out. If you look from the side, when I do this, you can see it's about 45 degrees out. It's not this way. Sometimes when you look at it straight on from the camera, it's hard to tell how far I'm turning. But the turn is just a little bit. Okay? So I'm here. Now the key is your timing. You want the front leg coming out as you turn and sink, and it comes in as you receive. All right? Then it starts here as I turn out and finishes here. You see, there's like, if you look at it straight on, there's this. As I'm coming up the center line, I'm turning towards this foot, right? See how there's like a contralateral relationship between right leg and left hand. Right? Then as I turn, it's a contralateral relationship between the right arm and left leg. And there's a twist towards the leg that's moving forward. And if I remember to keep that slight dragon palm as part of it, the energy becomes extended all the way to the fingers. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now we've been circling one way. Let's get the other hand and circling the other way. So now we turn the opposite direction and we start walking the other way. Let's get the walk down. Make a couple of circuits with just the legs, just like 1 or 2 circuits with just the legs. Outreach to receive. And then we add in the hand. and relax. So obviously you can feel there's a lot of coordination there. You can throw your balance off really easily, right? How many times have you noticed your weight moves to the outside of the, you'll roll to the outside of the foot, or you won't fold in right in the hip? There's a lot here. There's a lot to examine. And going slow and taking your time and examining it can be really valuable. All right? It can show you different ways that your body binds up tension unnecessarily when you move. And it also shows you where weaknesses exist that are more likely to hurt yourself when you're doing something exercise-wise or work-wise that involves twisting and moving at the same time, because those places of imbalance are where your body will tend to tighten up and not transfer weight or power well. And if you've got extra weight because you're carrying something and twisting and moving, that's when, to hold your balance, you'll tighten up and throw something out, or you'll fall, right? So practicing this sort of thing without the weight, and just working with the dynamic can be really, really valuable for that sense of, like, how's my body movement in twisting and moving at the same time, right? And it can go a long way to correcting a lot of that. And then eventually you start learning to do it so smoothly and well that if you ever find yourself needing to move something while moving, or adjust something while moving because something changes, your body can do that rapidly because you've kind of worked with it. You've worked with the structure and how it's supposed to be. Okay? All right. We've got a little bit of time left. I'd like to go through a little bit of the form. What I think I'd like to do is to work on the second 8 movements, because we've done the first 8 over and over again. I'd like to work let's go through the second 8 movements of the 16. So we've just done Immortal Pounds and Mortar. We have done the turn. We've done Immortal Pounds and Mortar, the turn. I'm going to face you so there's less confusion here. And in fact, I'm going to reverse. I'm going to do my left hand so you guys can do your right, because I think that's the way it works out. And we'll go split and open. Step back and withdraw. Step back to the right and white crane fends off snake. Play the loop. Down. Notice I come back out to shoulder width. Press straight forward. Turn that back foot. Shift back. Windmill the arms. Sink and brush past the knee. Come up. Turn that back foot in on the heel, like the heel stays down. The ball of the foot picks up. As you turn, come up. Pluck. Play the loop. Outreach. Neutralize. And press. Outreach. Neutralize. And press. Turn the back foot, windmill the arms, sink and brush past the knee. Turn the foot again, come up, block, and play the loop. Outreach, neutralize, and press. Turn, catch, and pull down. Bring the feet together and then step out with the left leg. Right hand first. Circle, circling palms. 1, 2, 3. And punch. And Immortal Pounds and Mortar. And close. All righty. That should have been a nice little review of those final 8 movements. It's like a feedback. Weird. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. Hold on. Somebody's audio is. There. Hey, there we go. Now there won't be any of the feedback. So thank you guys for joining me. That should have been a good review of the second 8 movements in this first 16 and that 16 move mirror form. On the dominant side, which is the right side, I did mine left, so translate to right-handed for you visually, if you mirrored me. And the circle walking. That circle walking is really, really valuable, and I encourage you, even if you don't walk in a circle, if you're going out for a walk, like before you even start taking your walk, take the time to like just do a number of steps like that, and then see if you can carry it on so that when you're walking, you can just and have it, and you're still moving from your center. You've got this sense of outreach to receive. You're never walking like this, like most people do, which is kind of a catching yourself from falling, and that's not ideal, right? If you're also getting that sense of being able to get that mud stepping where the whole back foot pulls up at once, you're activating an aspect of the lower body. And if you feel it, you can feel this pull, right? This pull, like there's this sense of pulling, and you're going to use that to draw chi. And it creates a feeling from the Dantian of a powerful like draw, and it trains the chi to draw chi from the earth easily and powerfully. That's been my experience with it. So enjoy, play around with it, and if you have any questions, send me a note or present it next time. If anybody has a question or anything now, you can also unmute and go ahead and ask it to me. All right, thank you guys. For sure.
For sure. Sorry I was late, Jeff. I've had IT problems.